It is rare that an anime does not have a single episode where it drops in quality, whether that be a slow filler episode, a horrible first episode, or even just a terrible ending. It is even rare that an anime manages to convey the story and characters through its pacing so well that it just keeps going up higher and higher every episode, not able to let you stop and catch your breath even if you wanted to. So, putting the terrible release schedule of 86 aside, I can safely say that, after its ending to the second season, it is the single best anime having aired in the past year. I mean, where do I even start? The animation that's seamlessly woven every scene together with no time to stop and think, the characters that you could almost reach out and touch with how real they feel, and the story and pacing that tugs at your heartstrings like a puppeteer gone mad. There's no one aspect of this show that stands above the rest, and just thinking about it makes me want to go out and shout, laugh, cry all at the same time. Like, how can any single story be able to place every word said, every action done, and every frame of every scene so perfectly that it never fails to hit you right in the feels? How can it pump you so full of anticipation and excitement for every single corner you turn, and how can it even possibly have the ability to feel so real that the loss of a character hits you like you've just had your favorite thing in the whole world wrenched away from you by a person that you trusted every single time? And you know what? Even when I had to wait, 3-4 months for them to release a single episode that one time, I can't even be mad. Because I knew that whenever 86 came back, it was going to come back with a banger of an episode, leagues better than the last. So 86 had a very simple message at the start, and like C-Dog VA had said once, it was simply,
racism bad, huh? Huh?
And as angry as I was at him for dropping the best show ever to grace the modern anime era, he was right, at least for the first few episodes. 86 had a heavy emphasis on discrimination, and honestly, still does. But that was never what made it so great. And you'd be sorely mistaken if you think that the theme of 86 was simply racism bad. We were introduced to Lena through her difference of beliefs compared to the rest of those around her, stubbornly refusing to accept the views of her world, even when those who were victims of it all had done just that. But unlike real-life examples of this, she doesn't just remain some idealistic little girl tweeting her opinions into every single thing that people say. Through her interactions with the Spearhead Squadron, she learns little by little that, even if the 86 were oppressed and forced to fight, they had found their own way of life that fit them. She begins treating them like people rather than some poor, helpless lost lambs in need of saving, and when the time comes to part ways, she promises to chase after them until she'd one day stand at equal footing with them. A character whom I had almost dismissed at the beginning to be another idealistic, young, clueless protagonist, had grown to become one who knew exactly what choices to make even when holding on to her ideals, and keeping her actions true to her beliefs, something that even the best heroes have trouble doing. She didn't need someone to fight for or an emotional pep talk. She had her eyes set on the moon and she did not intend on settling for a star. Nothing was changing that. But she's not even the star of the show. No, not by a long shot. Even though she was the main character I had thought I was missing in all the time I had spent watching anime, for once, my heart had not been captured by a cute silver-haired girl. No. Rather, it had been reaped by the very character that came off as being the badass, calm, and completely uninteresting power fantasy cheat code that would carry the entire team through the series with no consequences. Shin Nozen, the Shinigami, the tragic hero of this masterpiece. Even when all his comrades had gone on, he remained standing. Even when he'd had to put his own friends out of their misery, he fought fiercely. And even when his brother stood his way, and when the very thing he'd been fighting to reach was staring him in the face, he kept advancing. Shin wasn't the type of hero that blindly tried to save everyone, or protect everything that he held dear. He was the reaper that carried the weight of everyone who had fought alongside him on his shoulders, guiding them to a final resting place that, someday, would no longer be a battlefield. He was never the one who thought about what came after, or what led him there. He was the one who had his eyes set straight ahead, on the path that stretched out endlessly before him, putting one foot before the other until he was the only one whose footsteps still could be heard. He shouldered the burden of everything so that nobody else had to, never falling down even though he was constantly hearing the voices of the dead, pleading their last words to whoever's ears the words could reach. It is sad to think about just how much Shin had gone through even though he was hardly old enough to be out of high school. The pressure of all those souls that he'd helped free, those who he failed to free, and those who were still waiting to be freed, forced him to keep moving forward even when he could no longer find his purpose in life. When everyone else could settle down and enjoy a moment of peace, Shin was left pacing restlessly as the Legion whispered in his ears day and night. Even when just looking at these two, the duo that the entire story revolves around, 86 is a strong enough anime to give any of the top 10 a run for their money. But of course they didn't just stop there. The dynamic between the members of the Spearhead Squadron were unique and extremely human. They don't view themselves as disposable weapons who have no free will, and instead show that each and every one of them were, indeed, just a teenage kid making the best of what they had. Even when you knew a character was set up to die, every single death hit just as hard. The impact of each time the trigger of Shin's pistol was pulled, and each time he'd driven his knife into a fallen comrade's mech, hit equally as hard. But you feel the impact of each and every interaction so much more. From right into Shin's Brotobo pep talk to Frederica's genuine plea for Shin to not end up like her knight, every single moment is spent building up anticipation for what was going to happen next. Shin's final battle with his brother, Shin confronting Frederica's past knight, and something that had every single 86 fan on the edge of their seats ever since the end of the first season, the reunion of the Spearhead Squadron with their former handler, Vladilena Milise, who had grown from the idealistic, innocent commander scared of sending her troops into battle in Season 1 to the bloodstained queen of the 86. And this alone told us just how determined she was to reach for those stars so far out of reach. It's difficult for most shows to keep one question in the minds of the fans, and that question is, what will happen to the characters? Because most shows, even if they are well written with great characters and a great story, follow certain writing tropes that any seasoned anime fan could pick out at a moment's notice. But 86 does this flawlessly. We never know who is going to die and when. Even when it's established that Shin is like the immortal cheat reaper of the Spearhead Squadron, there is a feeling of genuine fear that crawls up between your shoulder blades whenever he's in a final battle against the enemy, completely alone. Hell, the amount of times that a well-made character with a great dynamic with the rest was killed just makes it even more believable when, before the final battle of Season 2, it seemed like the entire squadron had been wiped out one by one as they chose to stay behind while Shin moved forward. None of these characters feel disposable, yet they could be disposed of at any moment. That is the suspense of 86. So, what does the story end up being about at the end of Season 2? Well, in a few words, I would describe 86 as a story about loss, redemption, and pursuit. Most of these apply to both Lena and Shin, as they both lost those around them, fought to redeem themselves in their own eyes and those of others, and pursued the silhouette of a figure that seemed to keep moving further away. The theme of racism bad had long since been established as not the main focus of the show, and the story revolved around the growth of both Shin and Lena as each grew to be more like the other, going from the disagreeable captain-commander dynamic in the start where it almost felt like Lena's orders and words held no substance in the eyes of Shin, to the long-awaited reunion at the end of Season 2, which had me genuinely tearing up as Shin had finally found his purpose and Lena had finally caught up to him. I'm going to say that 86 is the greatest anime of the past year. At least, a mecha show that plays out like no other, with characters full of hope and determination that mesh with each other perfectly like the pieces of a finely machined jigsaw, and a main duo that, despite being separated for the entire show, has a dynamic so strong and so natural that they are shipped by the characters in their own show, and none of it feels forced. 86 is definitely an underappreciated masterpiece, and if for some reason you've watched a spoiler-heavy video without having seen the show, you're to watch it immediately before I show up at your house at exactly 4:39 a.m. tomorrow morning in a hot pink Subaru Forester. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. My name is Sue, and I'll see you all next time.